Mike here from Scuderia Audio, and today we're going to go over what we would consider to be part 2 of my Focal component speakers install video. After selling a couple of dozen of these systems, I realized, due to some constructive feedback, some extremely nice customers, that I was missing one important part. Now, in part 1, I showed how to remove the tweeter pods so they could install the new tweeters, and then I showed how to remove the big silver trim piece on the bottom of the doors so they could get in there and replace the mid-range. But what about the passive crossovers? What about these things? They have to be mounted somewhere. So what do? Do you mount them inside the door? Do you mount them outside the door, inside the car? How do you hook it up? What do you do with the wiring? What options do you have? Well, in this video, I'm going to go over all those options, and I'm also going to show how to take the door all apart to get the door card off. And then I'm going to show how to mount these inside the door card, and then I'll show the steps necessary to put the door all back together. And then I'll go over some options if you would rather not mount these inside the door. Okay, well, let's go play with the car. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to remove the tweeter holder, then we're going to remove the silver trim piece, then we're going to remove this top window gasket piece. Then we're going to get under here and loosen the hardware for the door lock and the door latch mechanisms. And then we're going to remove the door card. Okay, so let's get started. For the tweeter holder, you just want to get your butter knife and just real carefully, gently, just get the butter knife in between the outer rubber gasket and this plastic tweeter holder, because you want to just get behind there so you can apply gentle outward force. Just wiggle a little bit, grab it over here with your fingers. You want to pop the top out, not the bottom, because there are 2 tabs down here. You don't want to break anything, so you want to pop the top out. So just pull on it, and then see it'll pop out, and then you want to grab it and lift straight up, wiggle a little bit. See, then the 2 tabs will pop out from the bottom, and then all you do is just grab the little connector, depress that little tab with your thumb, remove the connector, and that's the tweeter. Okay, now you want to grab your 2mm and 3mm Allen wrenches. So to remove this silver trim piece, there are 6 machine screws that are 3mm. There are 2 tiny ones under here that are 2mm, and 2 way under here, one near the end and then one right in the middle. Now, I already removed those for the sake of brevity, but all you have to do is hold this rubber up and out of the way and get your Allen wrench in there and remove that one, and then land of the car, remove those 2, and then we'll remove these real quick. You don't have to tighten these very tight. A lot of people strip these out, but they don't have to be that tight. This isn't going anywhere. Okay, once those are out, then you just want to just grab this thing and pull it out starting from the bottom. And then move it out of the way. Now, from this point on, it's better if the window's down, so I'm just going to pause the video for a second to go get my car keys and roll the window down, and then we'll resume. Okay, so now we need to remove this rubber top window gasket. So you just, again, you get your butter knife, and if you look over here, there's these 3 little plastic connectors. You need to pop those out. So what I do, I just get the butter knife under there. Be careful not to scratch the car. Get it under there. Now it's going to take a bit of force because there's some glue in there that you're trying to push your way through. But get the butter knife in there close. And then take the butter knife and twist it each way. See, you can hear that. You can hear them and you can see them pop out of there. Take the butter knife out. See, there's a little bit of glue. It's no big deal. And you want to get it under this one. This one's a lot easier because there's no glue. You just put it in there next to it, twist, and then pop. Once you pop all 3 of those out, you just grab the whole thing, get in there with your finger. You might have to, get a little bit of the glue to separate. But then once you separate it, you can just gently pull the whole thing out of the car and get it out of the way. Now, I wanted to do the passenger side because it has this extra step. It has this door handle. Now, you don't have to remove this door handle, but you do have to remove the top 2 screws because they go straight through the door card into the door. So you're not going to be able to remove the door card from the door until you take those 2 fasteners out. So get your big 4mm Allen wrench and just take those 2 Allen head machine screws out of there. You don't have to mess with the bottom one, just these 2 top ones. Okay, so now we have to get under this leather armrest cover. Now the way you remove this, you just get your fingers and you put it under here in the very back and you just grab it and you have to lift it straight up. It takes a bit of force, but it just, see, it just pops in the back. And then you don't want to pull it up in the front until you slide it straight back a couple of inches, then lift up. Cause see, there's this little tongue that locks under there. You want to get that clear. Okay? Now, once you do that, you need to look at these 2 mechanisms here. There's this mechanism and there's this mechanism. Now this mechanism is for the door lock. Now you notice that when I push this lock down to lock the car, this rod goes back. And that's how the car locks. It's a solenoid that moves that rod back. And of course when you move it forward, the door unlocks, this pops up. So we need to loosen this. And then this cable here, this cable mechanism is for the door latch assembly. Watch, when I start to pull up on that, see the tension in the cable? That's how you unlock the door. So you get your little wrenches, your 7 and 8mm wrenches. So you take the 8mm and you just loosen that little fastener, right? And then loosen it the rest of the way with your fingers. See, so you can pull that back and get it out of that slot of this little holder. See that? And then for the door lock, you just take your 2 little 7mm wrenches and note the direction of the threads. So you want to hold that adjuster still, and then you just want to loosen that little nut. You see that? Now don't loosen it too much because you want to kind of remember where it was so that when you put it back together it's the same adjustment. So you kind of hold that with your finger and then you're free to twist the adjuster. Just turn it, turn it, turn it until you thread it all the way off of that rod. See that? Now it's loose. Okay? Now you can see that now that there's no tension on this cable, it's real easy to move this door latch up and down. In fact, you can pull it back all the way. In fact, you need to do that because under here there's one Phillips head machine screw, and you need to remove that to get the door latch out of there. So you just hold this up all the way with one hand, and then you get in there with your Phillips screwdriver. Okay, there we go. So that's that. So now there are only two more fasteners that you need to remove to get the door card off. One is, I won't show you with the camera, but it's so easy to see. When you're underneath the door card here, you'll see just one gold colored Phillips head. It almost looks like a wood screw. So you just put your Phillips screwdriver on there. Let me lay that down. Okay, remove that guy. Now up here, we want to lift this holder or this cradle up. Okay, so you just lift it up in the back and kind of wiggle it loose. You don't want to break it. It's kind of fragile, but then you want to lift it out of there up here, and then you want to just lift it up. Right, and get it out of the way. We'll just gently lay it right there. And then you can see there's the last fastener. It's a big, heavy-duty Phillips head machine screw. Now, the thing is torqued on really tight because that's doing most of the holding of the door card mechanism of the door. So when you go to loosen this, you're going to want to put a lot of force on there with your Phillips screwdriver because you don't want to strip this. So it's always a good idea to have a buddy standing on the outside of the door with some soft clothing and have him kind of lean against the door so that when you're pushing against the door, he can push back. Now, I've already cracked this loose for the purpose of this video, so it isn't going to take much to loosen it, but you get the idea. Okay, so we remove him. Now what we want to do, we need to take this cable that we disconnected up here, we need to take it loose from the actual door handle mechanism. Okay, so you can see at the end of the cable there's this 90-degree rod that goes in here, and there's this little nylon keeper. So all you do is you just get your thumb and hold it and just see that you just snap that keeper off of there, and then you're free to just grab this and just pull it out. Okay, now this cable is free. Now you want to just, now that you have this fasteners out, now you can go back and snake this guy back through and gently lay this cradle piece back into place. Come on, there we go. And then you want to lay this back into place just so you don't scratch anything. Okay? Okay. Now, once you do that, the door card is ready to come out of there. Now, on the top, here, here, and here, there are 3 little metal hooks and a hook around the top of the metal of the actual door. So what you need to do, you need to lift the door card straight up about maybe an inch or so in order for those hooks to clear. Once those hooks clear, then you can remove the top part of this. So you just kind of grab it, pull it out on the bottom a little bit, and then you grab here in the back, and then you just start lifting up. See, lift. Okay, now I can feel that the back one has freed, the middle one has freed. Now the front one, it's kind of tight right here, so you're just going to have to grab it and pull it up and kind of jiggle it and work with it and work that front one free. Pop, did you hear that? That one came free. And now, the door card is separated from the door. Now, if you look in here, there are just 3 easy things you have to do in order to completely separate the door card from the car. One is, remember that rod for the adjuster on the door lock mechanism? Well, there's this little keeper, there's nylon aligner. You want to do the same thing that we did with that yellow piece of nylon. You just take your thumb and you just push down on the nylon and you pull up on the rod and you just pop it out of there. Okay, see, now that's totally loose. Then you want to disconnect this wire, so you just grab this with your thumb, you pull that loose, and then the last connector is the mid-range speaker connector. You pull that loose, and voila! Okay, so here's the door card, the inside of the door card, and here is the passive crossover network for the Focal, Flax Series mid-range and tweeters. Okay, so the way we're going to fasten this to the door card is with some industrial strength Velcro. Okay, now actually Focal already has this kind of sort of cheapy foam backed double-sided tape, and this is what most people use, but I tend to over-engineer everything. This is the same industrial strength Velcro that I use when I ship the Ferrari 430 cradles, amplifier cradles that hold underneath the middle of the dash. I mean, this stuff, you put something on with this, it isn't coming off. In fact, I'm going to do a little demonstration here, okay? I cut a piece of this Velcro that's literally half the size of the piece that we're going to use for this passive crossover network. And I'm just going to take the adhesive off the back and I'm going to stick it right here. Okay? Then I'm going to get this big piece of loop, right? Hook, loop. And I'm going to put this on here. To show you, oh, wrong way. This way. To show you, see, this is holding the entire weight of this heavy door card with only half of the material. See that? So, using these big pieces to hold this really light passive crossover network, it isn't going anywhere. So, after a little bit of research, I realized that this is the best place to put this for 2 reasons. One, it's the only place on the store card that's flat, so you get maximum adhesion. And 2, the closer you are to the hinge, the less G-forces you're going to have on this component, right? I mean, if you put something way on the back, every time you shut the door, there's going to be a lot of force. But up here, there's nothing. So, I mean, it just fits in there perfectly. So, when you receive this as part of your kit, okay, it'll already have my Velcro on there. But so I'm just going to show you what I do for the customers, right? I take this adhesive off. I may have to pause the video because it looks like it might take some time to remove every trace of this adhesive. Oh, maybe not. We'll see how it goes. It looks like it's coming off. Now, of course, you want to get some Windex and a clean rag, and you want to thoroughly clean that surface on the back of the door card, because it will not work if there's any dirt, moisture, or anything like that. Okay, almost there. All right, okay, so I'm just going to take the adhesive backing off of this loop part. Okay, then I'm going to carefully adhere it to the back of this. Okay, then I'm going to take the hook part and align it to the loop. Okay, now this is how you're going to receive your passive crossover. So all you have to do is just peel the adhesive off of the hook side. Drop it into place. Push down. And you're good to go. This is outside of the rubber moisture curtain, so it isn't going to get wet or dirty or anything like that. So now we can put the car back together. Okay, I actually should mention one more thing before we put the car back together, just to be thorough, so everybody is absolutely certain of what they need to do. Okay, now you notice there are one set of cables going in this end, and there's two sets of cables going out of that end. All right, this is the input, and this is the output for the mid-range and the tweeters. They're marked, it's not an issue. So what you need to do is, on your car, the wire that comes in that plugs into the mid-range, that wire now plugs into this input wire. Okay? And then the output wire that's supposed to go to a mid-range now goes to your mid-range. And then you need to run one small separate wire from here up to the tweeter. Okay, you don't want to use the wire that's currently attached to the tweeter because it's in line with this mid-range, so we don't want to use that. Okay, you run a separate wire from the output of this thing that's supposed to go to a tweeter and put it to your tweeter. So, one more time, you take the wire that's otherwise would connect to this mid-range, you don't connect it to the mid-range anymore, you connect it to the input of this crossover. The output of this crossover has a mid-range and tweeter outputs. The mid-range output goes to your mid-range. The tweeter output goes to a new wire straight up to your new tweeter. Okay? Now we can put the car together. Okay. So, first thing is, we need to put the door card back on. So you want to hold it here and kind of get it into place. And now, remember the last three things we did were disconnect some things? Well, those are the first things that we have to do to reconnect it. Now, this is the point where you need to hook up your new wires to your new speakers. We're not going to do that with this video. But see, this is the wire that would go now to the input of your passive crossover. But for now, I'm just going to plug it back in where I found it in my mid-range. I'm going to plug this connector back in. I'm going to go down here and grab my remember this rod, and I'm going to snap this rod into place. There we go. And then one more thing, the cable for the door handle, see, you want to just, see out here, you want to just snake that through and make sure it's in here. You don't want to have to try to reach in there and try to grab that and pull it through once the door card is on, because it's a big hassle. So now, remember, you have your three hooks. So you want to hook the one in the front first, because that's the tight one. That's the one that's kind of a pain. So you can look down in there and you can see that hook. So you just keep pushing the door card in until you see that it's going to wrap around that metal. Okay, now you can just push straight down. And then push straight down. Pull this in and push straight down. Okay, now we're good to go. Now, if you want to make sure that it's aligned laterally, you do that by taking a couple of the screws that hold the big silver trim piece, and you make sure that you can start them and that they're aligned. Okay, looks like it's aligned perfectly. Okay, and another way is the gold screw underneath. If this thing's aligned, then that thing should go right in. Yep, looks like we're good to go. So we'll put this guy in. Okay. Now, we have to put that big monster Phillips head machine screw back in here. Remember, that does most of the holding of the door card into the door. So we have to gently pull this back out again. Just hold this up enough to wiggle this cradle back out again. Okay, let that slide through the hole just enough to get him out of the way. Gently get him out of the way. You don't want to scratch anything. Okay, then now the nut behind is on this little plate that moves around. This is by design, okay? So you just want to kind of get a little Allen wrench in there, and you just want to kind of move it around. You can clearly see. You want to make sure to get that hole aligned. The nut aligned with the hole, so it's easy to just then grab this big monster Phillips head machine screw and put him in. Okay, again, have your buddy lean on the outside of the door so you can put monster pressure on that guy. I'll do that later. Okay, now you can put the cradle back. You want to slide him back through the hole so you can freely drop this cradle back into place. Okay, then drop this down into place so that you can, okay, if you see, you need to grab that little tab. Remember this? Okay, you need to grab that tab and kind of sort of hold this open with this hand, and then you want to grab that lone black Phillips head machine screw, put it in that hole, drop the whole thing down into place. Hold this, the wider you hold this, easier it is. So just hold as wide as you can with your fingers. Drop that down into place. There's a pin under there, so if you tighten it up, it'll be aligned. Let's just tighten that guy. And then double check the alignment, not rubbing. We're looking good. Okay, so, uh-oh. I forgot something, but we're going to keep the camera rolling just to show everybody that I'm human. I need to take this back out because I forgot something. Okay. Before you put this in, you have to put this cable back on. So we're going to take this cable, we're going to put it under and then back up. Okay. Now, remember this little 90-degree metal end? We have to put that guy, remember, back on this nylon. Right? So you just grab him and you put him in the hole. Once it's in the hole, now remember that little piece of nylon that you popped off? Now you got to pop it back on. So you just twist it, and so you push up on the nylon and you push down on the pin. See that? You hear that pop? It popped back in. Okay, now we can go back to holding this apart with this hand. Put the fastener in. Drop that down. tighten him up. Okay, he's free and connected to the cable. So if you look in here, now we grab our cable piece. Okay, so now that we have the camera refocused, we want to take this cable mechanism, remember this, and we want to kind of pull it back until we can get this cable through this little slot back in this holder bracket. So we just put it in there. It's better if the cable is underneath the rod for the locking mechanism. So then just move the little nut back, right, and start him. Okay, so that's done. We just need to cinch him up, but it's basically in place. Then, remember the rod, we need to grab the little adjuster. Let me get back around here. It's easier to do this way, and then you can still see with the camera, right? So you just make sure it's lined up, and you just keep turning this, and turning it. It'll come closer and closer, closer to that set nut. Okay. Then you get your two 7mm wrenches again. And you cinch him up. Then you get your 8mm wrench and you cinch the cable nut snug. Okay. Then we get the leather armrest cover. Remember the tongue? You just put it in there and you slide it forward. And you look back here and you make sure that this part is right there in place, and then you just pop him into place. Okay, the next thing is we take our top window gasket. Now, you can see there's a little piece of metal with a groove all the way down, and there's this little piece here that sticks out. It's like a rib. The rib goes in the groove. Make sure it's in the groove. Once it's in there, it tends to stay in there. Just take your time, press it through. It might get hung up right here on the upholstery, so just push that down. Keep pushing him in. It gets a little bit harder and harder as you keep going because there's more friction, but that's okay. Keep pushing him in. Kind of tuck that underneath the door card, and you'll see it go into place. Then you just align those three little fasteners, right? And then you just pop, pop, pop. Okay? So now we grab our big silver trim piece. Make sure this rubber gasket, see, mine fell off a little bit. I have some double-sided tape. I need to press that on there. Okay. So when you put this on, it's best to start at the top, and since there's a gasket here, you kind of want to, like, you know, get it at an angle so that this sharp edge can kind of, like, you know, tuck underneath the gasket. You see that? And you press it in there. Once that's into place, you just lower the whole thing into place. Right? Now, these 6 Allen head machine screws, one of them is longer than the rest of them. It's this top back one. Okay, for the purposes of this video, I'm only going to put 2 in so we don't burn too much time. Okay, Then you want to get your big 4mm. So we won't forget our 2 Allen heads for the door handle. Those guys back in. Okay. Then we want to grab our tweeter. Okay, a little plug got hung up back here. So we'll get him out of there. Okay. Then we plug him back in. Okay. Then you want to snake that connector back down through that little rubber hole so that it doesn't bind against anything. Okay, once you have him back there, then remember, you take the 2 bottom tabs and you put the tabs in first. You push down. Now you want to get your butter knife, and you always want to make sure that this rubber gasket is outside this. You don't want to pinch this, right? So you just kind of use the butter knife to make sure, okay, he's out there, and then this little thing, lift him up, make sure he's out there, and then you come up here and make sure the top part is out. And then once the whole thing has cleared this, then you can just push it into place. Okay, and it looks like we are done. Okay, well, hopefully you have a much better idea of how to get in there and finish the mid-ranging tweeter install. Now, on the 430, there's a couple of differences. One is on the front of the door card near the jamb, there are some Phillips screws in the front, 2 or 3 of them, that help hold the door card onto the door that are not on the 360. In fact, there's some little round leather, matching leather plugs, so you have to get in there real careful with a small screwdriver, pop those 3 little leather plugs out, and then get in there with a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, and you can get those screws out. The other thing is, on the door lock mechanism on the 430, it's all electronic. They don't have that rod with the little adjuster, so that's one less thing you have to worry about. You just unplug it. Okay, well, have a great day.